The body of 14-year-old Lee was found on Stockton Beach the morning after a party attended by dozens of teenagers at the Old Stockton Surf Club. 2 weeks later, 2 men were charged with her assault and a youth with her sexual assault. Now 18-year-old Matthew Grant Webster has been charged with her murder and sexual assault. Webster appeared in Newcastle local court this morning before a packed gallery. The defendant sat silent and showed no emotion as Magistrate Jeff Brown refused bail on the grounds that both the offence was so serious and the defendant could be in danger if he was allowed to go free. Webster was remanded in custody to reappear on the 5th of next month. Relatives of the dead girl left the court visibly distressed. Ross Hampton, NBN News.
The local government and Shires Association is driving home the need for increased road funding through this vintage bus.
So we have a 1920s bus and we're saying we want something better than 1920s funding. We want to see something better than 1920s roads.
For 10 days, the vehicle will travel around the state, gathering support from local councils and residents. Its first stop today was at Gorokan on the Central Coast. The association claims that despite increased road use, Commonwealth funding has fallen 30% since 1984.
People are paying 30 cents a litre on all their motor fuels, going directly to the federal government, and the federal government is only returning 5 cents a litre of that tax on roads. We're saying that that's not enough. We want a proper share of funding to go back into the roads.
The association is calling for an immediate increase in funding of 2 cents a litre. They're asking people to support the travelling campaign by completing 2 questionnaires, one addressed to Land Transport Minister Bob Brown and the other to his opposition counterpart John Sharp.
We'd ask them to come forward and take some of our letter cards and literature, and if they agree with us that there should be a greater share of the taxation that they are paying coming back onto their roads, we want them to inform the government and to inform the opposition parties so that in the course of this federal election campaign, both the government and the opposition parties make a proper commitment to the people of Australia to improve their roads.
Mrs Welsh's candidacy has not been confirmed, but she said today she is seriously considering running. While she's been thinking about it for some time, Mrs Welsh said she'd still like to consult friends and others before committing herself.
I don't take things on and do it halfway. If I'm going to do it at all, it will be boots and all. I'm not a half measures person. Anybody who knows me will tell you that.
Apart from her role as Mayoress of Lake Macquarie, Lorraine Welsh is also involved in Meals on Wheels, the Valentine's Spastic Centre, Home Start and Skill Share, here teaching out-of-workers a bar and waiting course. But she feels she can do more.
The change has to come before we get some improvement, like everything. And it doesn't matter whether you go into business, a new broom sweeps clean. And I think we do need that change, and we've got to get some improvements into the area. That's what I want to do.
Other likely challengers for Shortland are Liberal Lynn Hall and Alderman Mark Booth from Lake Macquarie. The incumbent Peter Morris, who would have to suffer a greater than 15% swing to be unseated, would only say today that he welcomes all nominees.
The new arrangements will mean major changes for local motorists. The reorganisation centres on the partial closure of a previous link road, Moore Street in Jesmond, between Wilkinson Avenue and Rankin Drive. Traffic will now be redirected via the newly commissioned Blue Gum Road roundabout. It's all part of government plans to build State Highway 23, a 4-lane arterial link between Newcastle Road at Jesmond and Sandgate Road at Shortland. The partial closure of Moore Street will allow contractors to begin the next stage of the Rankin Drive reconstruction. Twin overpasses will cross the State Highway as the new route separates through and local traffic. This afternoon, motorists had to deal with the new arrangements for the first time. After 2 years' work on this project, the Roads and Traffic Authority is sensitive to any adverse public reaction. Likewise, member for Waratah John Price, who's called for patience from motorists to overcome any initial confusion.
Repair work in Beaumont Street has progressed slowly since the earthquake. Many residents and shop owners have become disheartened by the lack of building activity. Last night, Newcastle City Council took the first step towards revitalising the centre with the launch of an urban design study.
It means a framework for community participation so that the residents and shopkeepers and businesses in Hamilton can have a say in their own rebuilding and their own renewal.
Because of the urgency of the situation, planning consultants Gardner Brown put the study together in only 3 weeks. According to the study, Beaumont Street has the potential to become one of Newcastle's most significant centres. It suggests ways of rebuilding and restoring the street without altering its unique character.
I think it'll be more the same than change. I think that's what is coming through, that people had a certain flavour, if you like, of Hamilton. It was distinctively Hamilton, and it's something that we would wish to maintain.
The area's heritage and ethnic culture will be retained through its buildings and street development, including pedestrian areas, outdoor eateries and landscape courtyards. As of Monday, the study will be on display for 6 weeks at Newcastle and Hamilton libraries. Jodie McKay reporting for NBN News.
The riddle of Michael Swazak's death begins at the Islington Bowling Club on New Year's Eve. Michael and friends arrived there at about 7:30 p.m. That night, about 400 people were celebrating the new year and an AIDS benefit night. Police interviews have given them a detailed account of Michael's movements at the party.
We've interviewed in excess of 60 people who have actually attended the party that night, and we can account for his movements whilst at the club.
The final hours are the most intriguing. Police know Michael stayed until closing at about 3:30 in the morning. When he left, he was obviously affected by alcohol. It's believed he walked out of the building with 2 men, aged 35 and 45. But then there's a puzzling gap. 15 days later, Michael's decomposing body was found dumped in scrub beside the Pacific Highway south of Karua. Police are convinced he didn't make his own way to that isolated place. They believe his body was dumped there just hours or days after the party. What happened and how he died have baffled detectives. They say the answer lies in 2 important questions. First, police need to hear from anyone who saw Michael leaving the party that night. They want to know who he was with and where he was heading. Any information about this is vital.
His movements are unknown to us after he left the club. A member of the public may have seen something. They themselves may believe it's insignificant, but we'd love to hear from anyone who may be able to offer us some small piece of information. Any information which is forthcoming, we'd certainly treat with utmost confidentiality.
Secondly, police need to know what happened to Michael's clothing. His body was almost naked. At the party, he was wearing black acid-wash jeans and a distinctive green shirt with black stripes. He was also wearing white Dunlop Volley brand sand shoes. Michael Swazak was 16 years old, 174 centimetres or 5 foot 9 inches tall, with shoulder-length blonde hair and of slight build. If you think you can help police, call them now on the Crime Stoppers number 008 422 199. There's a reward of up to $1,000 for information leading to an arrest. The number to call once again is 008 422 199. The low-key tour included members of the Transport Department's Sea Safety Centre and the Australian Property Group who are acting as agents in the venture. The inspection included floor space in the former Nesca building. It's understood the Australian Maritime Safety Authority would need about 5,000 square metres to accommodate 200 staff. AMSA doesn't officially come into being until January next year, but it will obviously need headquarters by then. Another option being explored by the Advance Party was to lease office space at Harbour Park Centre on Wharf Road. However, there's another opportunity about to emerge on a vacant site next door. Dooran Construction plans to build a third office block on this site. If AMSA was to locate here, there's every likelihood they'd need an alternative lease until the building was completed. A spokesperson for the Sea Safety Centre said there were at least 7 entrepreneurs competing for the contract. At this stage, it's not known when a decision will be made.
Cessnock and last year's premiers South will clash in the first game at the Cessnock Sports Ground, with Toronto Workers and the rejuvenated Lakes United coming head-to-head at Lyle Peacock Field at Toronto. The scheduled game between Maitland and Western Suburbs tonight was cancelled earlier this week as the Pumpkin Pickers failed to raise a team. The withdrawal has now thrown a bye into the pre-season competition, but it's hoped Maitland will have a first-grade side by the time the competition proper gets underway. Newcastle Rugby League manager Tom Ellis says apart from Maitland, most clubs have worked hard to strengthen their ranks.
I made a comment in our annual report. There was an enormous number of good juniors come through in nearly every club last year. Most of those seem to have been able to consolidate their positions with the first grade sides and the clubs they came from. Some have moved to other clubs, but those juniors are still there.
With plenty of local talent on show, Ellis is confident the crowds will naturally follow.
We had an excellent crowd at our trial the other night in the rep trial. We're hopeful the crowds will be good. It's mainly a night competition, mostly a Friday night competition, but a couple of clubs are playing Saturday nights, and so the idea is to play in that time of day when it's not quite so hot.
Operation Jack-Up is the unfortunate title of Maitland Highway Patrol's latest enforcement. For some time, truck operators have asked police to take a closer look at the ordinary motorists and check the safety of their vehicles. Today, police did that. Cars were flagged down at random and given a thorough check-up under the supervision of an RTA inspector. Police checked more than 20 vehicles on the first day, only a handful passed the test. Motorists aren't booked for offences, but they are issued defect notices and must carry out the repairs. So far, the defects have been minor.
We see the headlight and bulb offences quite regularly when we're driving around. A lot of the people just aren't aware that they have got these faults, and if they've done a bit of home maintenance, they would be quite aware that headlights, blinkers aren't working. Other things like rust, well, you can expect that in most vehicles as they get a bit of age, but for the strike rate, where about 50% of the vehicles have got minor defects in them that we have pulled over so far.
Are the motorists surprised at the result?
I don't think so. I think some of them know that they have got the defects and they just haven't been paying the necessary attention to the vehicle that it does deserve.
The operation will continue one day a month for the rest of the year. Meanwhile, the RTA has released the results of a year of heavy vehicle inspections throughout New South Wales. Tests on 74,000 trucks showed almost half had defects, while 5% had serious problems such as brake or steering failure. Prime Movers recorded the highest defect rate, while enclosed trucks were the lowest. Newcastle City Council's fleet of 50 heavy vehicles topped the 6 best fleets in the state. The result is a slight improvement on the previous year when Council's fleet came second. Officials say the result is a matter of pride to the 60 workshop personnel who say Council's light vehicles and plant received the same standard of service.
Teaching was once regarded as a fulfilling and secure career, but talk to teachers these days and most are dissatisfied with the job.
Very low morale. they're still working at probably the same level as they were before, but just, no enthusiasm to do anything or start anything new because you've just had it. By the time you get home and, well, what's the point? I mean, I'm only going to get teacher bashed, by either the community or by the government.
Figures released from the Department of Education show the number of teachers in the Hunter region who quit last year rose by 63%. 127 teachers resigned compared with 85 in 1988. The department claims the figures vary from year to year and points out that in 1986, 122 teachers left the job. They admit morale is low in the profession, but deny that teaching is no longer a fulfilling career.
I really believe it's still a very fulfilling career, a very fulfilling profession, and the evidence that I see in the lives of many teachers and within many schools would confirm that.
The Teachers Federation, though, says the figures are indicative of the general unhappiness within the ranks. Di Roberts is one of those people dissatisfied with teaching.
I resigned from teaching because partly to do with the stress with the whole job and partly to do with the amount of work I had to do for the amount of pay I was getting.
Although the present state government is receiving the brunt of the teachers' anger, teachers admit that problems within the system began years ago.
I think the problem's been ongoing for a while, but it's been exacerbated by the current state government, certainly. They've institutionalised their neglect, I think, of education, and it's really, I don't think there can be any improvement until they change that and get a longer-term view for education.
Most of those teachers who've resigned have sought jobs in the private sector, where the pay is higher with opportunities for promotion.
Going to another job that offers more pay, that offers avenues of promotion that certainly aren't here, and also that one where the employer, the industry, shows a bit more concern for their employees.